This podcast is for educational and informative purposes only. Thank you and enjoy the program. Okay, well, welcome to this side of the page. My name is Stephanie Milan. I'm an author, writing coach, owner of Milan Book Publishing, a publishing consulting and services company, and a certified Chopra health instructor. And the many hats that I wear allow me to have dynamic, transformative discussions with incredible authors across multiple genres. So this episode is titled, Did You Just? And the Power of the Senses with my guest, Anna Marie Hrivnak. She's been an educator, a writer, and a counselor for several years, and she's someone I revere greatly, and I'm very lucky to call my friend. So first and foremost, Anna Marie, thank you so much for being here and for being my first guest on this podcast.
I am honored, Stephanie. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I look forward to sharing things.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to dive right into some questions about the book. First, I want to show everyone this adorable picture book, Did You Just? You just published this, and this highlights the joy and expression of life through the magical world of the senses. You know that I love to talk about the senses, and that especially with regards to the 6 pillars of health. So we will get to that a little bit later in the podcast. But first, I want to start with my son loves this book. He's 2.5. You know that, but the audience doesn't know that. Mm-hmm. He always grabs this book. In fact, when I was doing some work to try to come up with some questions, he was grabbing the book, and then he goes through and we do some really cute things with it. So I read him the book, and then we'll look at the pictures, and he'll pick out colors, different objects in the picture. And he always says like toys or car or a little boy. And then he always, says the colors that they are, but he always goes to the page with, and not he likes the cover, but he goes to the page with the little boy in the rain. And he always, and since I gave him the book, he's done that, by the way. And he will go and turn to it, and then he'll say things like house and, boot. And it's the cutest little thing. And I'm like, this is so adorable. But I wanted to mention that first because he loves that so much. But I did want to talk to you about what inspired you to write this book, because it's so adorable. And like I said, the senses are so important to children and to adults as well.
They certainly are. And Steph, I think it's because of the joy that I've had both with my own children, raising my own children. I was also very fortunate to teach preschool. And I was acutely aware of, for children, their first experience with the world is through their 5 senses. And it's a time when they discover, it's a time when they become creative. And creativity is like one of the things I embrace most in life. So watching children discover the world through their 5 senses is exhilarating for me. And I wanted to share that in my first book. So that's why I chose it.
Lovely. I love that. And why the title, Did You Just?
Well, Stephanie, to be truthful, I absolutely am focused on the creative process. Mm-hmm. And again, having had the opportunity to teach school for so many years, I taught more on and off for 37 years. And I understood that the discovery of your own creativity came through the 5 senses. Mm. And it's funny how, as a preschool teacher, I would turn around to my students and I'd say, did you just see what you wrote? Or did you just see what color you used? And for parents, especially new parents, when they're working with or sitting with their children and they say dada or mama for the first time, people will turn around and say, did you just hear what they said? So for me, Did You Just is just filled with excitement of creativity and just being aware of the aliveness in the world. So I loved that as a title.
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. I love that. So another question to follow up with that would be, By the way, I've been looking at the camera,
I know,
looking
I can
at
see it.
so I'm going to stop doing that. Okay. Another question that I have is why the little boy and a dinosaur idea? Did that come to you somehow differently as well? Like, did that come through your children or was it through your like school kids?
Mhm.
That
I think
choice.
because of this particular age group that I was trying to hone in on, which is the age of discovery and enchantment and curiosity. Usually between the ages of 2 and 6, children are fascinated, both boys and girls, with dinosaurs.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I love dinosaurs. And truth be told, the dinosaur that is in this book is an actual stuffed animal that I have.
Aw, so cute.
And I just loved the color. I loved the adorable face. And so that's what I chose to put in this particular book to make sure that my little boy had the dinosaur in every single exploration that he had. So that's why, I just love the dinosaur, the little stuffed animal.
What's interesting, my son calls them roars. So he'll be
Roars.
like, "Oh, look, there's a little roar." It's so cute. I love it. It's so cute. Now I know we both worked with the same illustrator for a book or
Yes.
two. So I wanted to know about your visions because when you're having a book illustrated, you might have some creativity to give some creativity to the illustrator, but you know I know for my book and I know for your book you were very specific about
Oh,
what you wanted.
mhm.
And so how did what was that process for you in terms of creativity, because that's also a creative process, right? Like coming up with those designs and stuff like that and saying this is what I specifically want. How was that process to come up with all of that stuff?
I can say that I found it exhilarating and then sometimes very frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was a
Mhm.
combination of both. And very rarely, but it has happened, disappointed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I want to be truthful about all of that. I
Sure.
am using a particular platform to work with the illustrator. But when I wrote the book, each and every section that I wrote, I saw what I was writing.
Hmm.
And for me, uh, words actually appear for me as an image. Like I will see an image and then you can put a word to it, or I see a word and I put a vision to it. So I give a lot of credit to the illustrator that worked with me because when I would describe what I was hoping for, I would often send her pictures that I would like her to at least look at and just say, this is the sense of my book just fell off my bookshelf. I get it. It's saying it wants attention.
I was laughing too hard, so I had to stop for a second. Um, we're back. So I was just asking you about this whole creative process with the illustrations. So please feel free to continue.
I will. And what I would say to you is working with this other person, the illustrator, was, like I said, a real effort for both of us. Sometimes
Hmm.
she didn't quite understand what I was looking for, and I found it even more challenging for myself to explain the exact detail that I was hoping to achieve. And
Hmm.
so at times that was hard, but at the same time, sometimes it was magical because I would say something and she would be able to capture it, and it was wonderful. It was exactly what I was looking for.
I
So,
want to show, yeah, if you're okay with it, I want to kind of like
sure.
hold up one of these illustrations because they're really adorable. The reason why I actually asked you that question is because let's see if we can see it. Nah, I am not going to do
I think if you
that.
tilt, maybe.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Just so cute.
Yeah.
I love it.
Perfect.
So, I ask you that because when I write, and even when I'm writing my novels, I visualize things so detailed, just so incredibly detailed,
Mhm.
down to like every color so vivid, and it's a lot of times hard. I mean, I would imagine a lot of authors do this, and
Mhm.
when it's a picture book, getting that, if because I'm not an illustrator, right? So it's
Mhm.
like getting that image onto the page when you have such a detailed vision of it is, even when you're doing writing a book like a novel, because you want people
Mhm.
to read it and envision it so clear,
Right.
and just so detailed. So that's why I asked you that question.
Yeah,
And
and you know
why
what? If
did
you don't
good.
mind, I'm going to jump in and interject
Sure.
because you did select that particular picture.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to at least share that I chose that particular um, illustration as the first illustration because it's one of the things that children fear, and it's lightning, thunder, and
Okay.
lightning. And so I started the book with that because I wanted children to begin to understand that this whole book, if you see, the little boy is comforting his dinosaur. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the first concept that I wanted to be able to share with children is that we can comfort, self comfort, and comfort other people. Okay, especially like our dogs or our stuffed animals and everything, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a first step towards self-regulation, which is a very
Okay.
important
Wow.
step and concept for little ones as they are, coming into school, how to regulate themselves when they're angry or upset or frightened. Okay, and but
Absolutely.
also from a creative adult's point of view, energy or lightning is all sheer energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to start the book with energy. Okay. I also
Wonderful.
chose that because um, lightning has the ability to take something that's totally dark and illuminate it. And I was hoping that this book would illuminate the whole beauty of curiosity and the five senses and discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
I
for me, it was a very, very deep choice, very deep and meaningful choice for me to select that as the first picture.
I would imagine that if we went through every page in the book, which I don't want to do because I want people to buy the book,
Hmm.
is that we would have like a discussion for every single
Absolutely.
image, because I know you and I know it would be like marvelous, because even that I had no idea. And what I also think too is for young kids, like my son's age 2.5, the image of a child like comforting his dinosaur, I notice he mimics a lot right now. So
Yes.
he will look at that and then he will grab his dinosaur and like hold it close to him, which is I guess just another way that kids are learning, how to do certain things. So
Right.
okay, so I want to jump a little bit more into the actual writing process for you. Um, when I used to do these videos or these interviews before, I would always ask authors about their writing habits. And what I learned was so interesting to me that when I wrote my book for people who want to write a book, which is Oh, the Stories You Will Write, I included all of these different writing styles, writing habits, and things in there, largely from the work that I had done interviewing authors.
Hmm.
So I know that, you happen to be one of the most creative people that I've ever met in the entire planet. So I want to know how you receive creativity, how you, because a lot of people I know will say, I'm not creative, or I am not, I can't. How many times have you heard? Because I know you've heard this too. I can't write a book. I'm not a creative person. But I don't believe that. I believe everybody is creative.
Oh, we are.
But what is your process? How does it come to you? Or does it just flow all the time? Because every time I talk to you, there's like another cool creative idea.
Well, it's funny, Steph. I don't lack for ideas. I don't, and I feel I'm very thankful for that. I really am, and but I think it has a lot to do. I could never coin what I experienced in my life until I heard Elizabeth Gilbert give a talk. And during her talk, she said, the most important thing for us to hold on to is curiosity.
Hmm.
And then I also heard Carolyn Mace say something very similar. And they both said that you don't get old or life doesn't become boring if you stay curious.
Oh,
And I
okay.
suddenly realized that's what I had walked through my life with.
Hmm.
Things,
Mhm.
I was always curious about something someone would say or something that I had seen for the first time or heard for the first time or tasted for the first time. So my senses, my five senses, were very acute within my everyday life.
Hmm.
And so that's what I think, spurs my creativity, just to
Sure.
see. Yeah. And also the brain.
Okay.
It is thrilling to realize when you're working with children, especially, and you're talking to them about a new idea or teaching them something that they haven't learned before, and to see that awareness behind their eyes. It's so cool to sit with a child and all of a sudden you see bing and they
Mhm.
they get it. They get it. And
Mhm.
that discovery
Mhm.
and that connection within their own inner world. And that's what happens to us as authors. I mean, we walk around and all of a sudden there's just an idea. And sometimes we can't get to a pen and paper quick enough to jot
Mhm.
it down.
Mhm.
Thank goodness. I mean, the world has changed in the number of years since I've been writing. I mean, now I have my cell phone right next to me and I can just turn on notes and just put the notes in. But back in the day, um, I'd have to carry a tiny little notebook with me and just jot things down.
Yeah, so listening to what you're saying about this idea of curiosity, I just like was going through my own life and thinking, there were times where I felt more drawn into just like the everyday life where that, I guess you would say that creativity, even though I happen to be a very creative person, that
Mhm.
it was more dormant than, let's say, just everyday living, which I think when you're a child, when you're very young,
Mhm.
everything is curiosity, right? Like everything is creativity and curiosity. And then as you get older, different experiences may, you know, shift you into more a left brain, let's say. But I did notice that at some point, and you know me very well, but at some point, I I just began becoming like a truth seeker, is what I would call it, where it's like everything that I would like hear or read or whatever, I'd be like, oh, I want to investigate that, or oh, I want to, and so when you said like the curiosity thing, I'm like, that has just like, even as I get older and older, it's just like more and more, I feel more and more that if I read something or I look at something, oh, I want to investigate that. I want to look at that. And I call it truth seeking because it's like, I want to get to the bottom of this, but like really, sometimes there's just no answer, but it's just something interesting to look into. But yeah, so it just made me think of that. What about your favorite spot to write, and also how you write? Because a lot of authors will use outlines, storyboarding, um, so there's different ways to kind of lay out the book. That, and also, do you need to be in a quiet room? Are you somebody who likes to have music playing? Are you someone who likes to be in a bookshop or a cafe? What is that process like for you?
It's very important for me to be alone. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't like any distractions around me when I am putting words to paper. Okay. Because I feel it very deeply.
Hmm.
Okay. If I could go to Barnes and Noble and sit there with all the books around me and not people coming in and out and talking and things, that would be ideal. But what I've done is I've created it in my own house. I mean, I
Hmm.
have, we can't see it in this particular frame right here, but behind me are tons of books. And so I try to write in this room, in this particular room, and I write with. I like to have a vantage point outside my window. So when I write, I like to be able to stop and look out at something that I find comforting. And I find trees and flowers very comforting, and water. And
Okay.
I'm very fortunate to have two sources of water that are close by me that I can listen, because water is the biggest conductor to our own intuition and creativity. And as writers, you and I both know it's an intuitive process.
Mm-hmm.
It's a deeply, deeply intuitive process, which, and I think somewhere along the line, you're going to ask me a question along this line about what writing, how my writing journey came up. So I'll wait until you ask me that
Mm-hmm.
and I'll tell you.
Sure. Well, it's going to be my next question. So whenever you want to dive into that,
Right. Well, I
you can.
had wanted to be a writer ever since I can remember remembering. I mean, that's how deeply ingrained this has been for me. It, from the very first time that I can remember remembering, I've wanted to get stories out in whatever form. And when I was in high school, I happened to have had the same teacher from 6th through 11th grade. In 6th grade, she happened to have been my reading teacher, and from 7th to 11th, she was my English teacher. And she also happened to be the teacher who taught, who was in charge of the school newspaper and the school magazine. And I was thrilled to death, thinking, that I could learn to write and publish things, and she was a taskmaster. I
Mm-hmm.
think in the years that I had her, I only was able to get two or three things in both the magazine and the school newspaper. And there were particular reasons about that. One or two things that her opinion at that time was that she thought some of the things that I wrote were too emotionally based, too heart centered. And that, for me, put in the two or three little drops of doubt. And so as I moved into college and moved into getting my master's and things like that, that drop of uncertainty that I could write something meaningful haunted me through my whole creative process. And so I began to create things in other ways, but with writing, I held back. I held back. And that's something that it's not that I'd say I regret. I wrote, but that drop of doubt was there, and that was very hard. And so I found myself fanning the embers of anyone who did want to write. And I encouraged them as much as I could and stood beside them in support, because it was something that was deep within my own heart. And this particular teacher is one of the reasons I became a teacher myself,
Hmm.
because I wanted to be able to, in my own thoughts, encourage students to never doubt themselves. So that was, so I worked through that creativity in that format. I did.
Nice.
So
You and I both share that desire to help people write and, publish their books. For me, it's publishing their books. It's a nice little segue into this last portion I'm going to talk about before we take a short break.
sure.
But I wanted to just mention, I don't want to toot my own horn here, so this is not about
Oh,
me.
you should.
I did help Anna Marie. I did help her
Yes,
publish her
you
book.
did.
Um,
Yes.
but and I also made her sit through my self-publishing course so that she could give me feedback for it. So I did do that. But beyond that, I wanted to talk about the self-publishing process, because you know that I enjoy helping authors self-publish their books. You obviously learned certain things from me, but what was that process like for you? Did you feel, because I always tell authors, I always am the person who's like, it's not as easy as it looks, and there's like a lot of things that you have to do it well and, do it right, and even things like working with an illustrator and whatnot. So what was that process like for you? Did you feel like it was more challenging than you thought it would be? Did you feel like it was a little easier than you thought it would be? Or did you feel like it was just as you expected it to be?
Uh, Yeah, I found a wax and waning, to be very truthful. Yeah, I did. And I think if it were anything but, we wouldn't be learning our craft.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it needs to have a fine balance. It needs to have a fine balance. And I think had the teacher that I had all those years, had she been more astute in understanding how to guide my process versus criticize it, okay, it would have been wonderful. And that's certainly what I found with you. You know, when I came
Well,
in
thank
with my
you.
manuscript and everything, it was a guiding versus a criticizing. It was,
But that was not my intention for this question.
yeah, but I do want to go ahead and say that. It was a cooperative effort to bring to fruition uh, a dream, okay, but also a vision.
Mm-hmm.
And that was magnificent. And like I said, for myself, I learned that when I was young. That's why I did become a teacher, because that's what I wanted to then take into the world. You know,
Mm-hmm.
how to be cooperative with the student and not criticize, but fan the embers and just nurture. And that's what I found in you. Yeah, I did. That's what I found there. I have to say also, I did get a chance to work with a woman named Emily Hanlon, who is an author. And I went to several writers' workshops with her up in Maine. She runs her workshops up in Bar Harbor. And Emily was everything that this teacher was not, the
Good.
teacher that I went through high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very lucky to have had those experiences. Yeah.
Great. That's really nice. All right, so we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we will dive into one more quick question before we get to the meat of this conversation. So stay tuned. Hey there, I hope you all are enjoying this interview. So many of us want to write a book, but we don't know where to start. My mission as a writing coach has always been to motivate and empower authors with the tools and confidence to write the books they have always wanted to write. That's why I wrote Oh, the Stories You Will Write, a motivational guide to empower aspiring authors, and an accompanying workbook, Oh, the Stories You Will Write, the workbook, to help authors achieve their writing goals. A link is in the description below this podcast. Milan Book Publishing is a publishing consulting services company that aims to help authors with their writing and publishing needs. Whether it's writing coaching, editing, or self-publishing consulting, Milan Book Publishing is there for you. Want a free estimate? Check out our services page at milanbookpublishing.com/services-menu or email us at admin@milanbookpublishing.com. Now, back to our program. Okay, welcome back to the program. So I want to ask you about the importance of a writing tribe, because this is something I'm very passionate about. You and I are in the same writing tribe,
We are.
and we are with Carol Harkavy, who is the author of Rosie and Me and Vignettes on Life, Reflections of a Septuagenarian, Debbie Nass, who is the author of Mended, and Susan Zapfi, who is the author of The Grumpy Biscuit. And we took a long time to find each other. You and I knew each other for years before we
Yes.
joined our writing group together. I know that people have been in other writing groups before. We weren't all published authors before we entered, but now we all are. And so just talk to me about the value that if you found value in a writing group, and why you think it's important for other authors to have a writing tribe, as we call it.
Right. I think it's absolutely important. I think just being able to connect with like-minded people, okay, is very important. And writing is most of the time, 98% of the time, that's my percentage, a solitary act.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have a writing tribe and you can connect with them and share what's going on, it is very, very restorative for your own creative process. And it's wonderful to hear that someone else was up until 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock or 2
Mm-hmm.
o'clock going over the same paragraph repeatedly,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just not sounding the way that you would like it to. And truthfully, you don't feel crazy. You know, you want to
Mm-hmm.
look at someone else and think, oh, yes, we all understand that. And connecting with other people also spurs the motivation for yourself to continue to walk the journey, because it can be an arduous task at times. Yeah, it really
I
can be.
completely agree.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and I've found that even in our writing group, like there will be times where I would feel life is too hectic right now or whatnot. And then we would get together and all of a sudden, even sometimes you and I would meet on Zoom and we'd have a conversation about something completely different. But then, all of a sudden I would write in fact, I have to mention this. I was questioning on whether or not to rewrite one of my books one time you and I were talking about in a Zoom. And I was like, I'm going to redo this and redo this. And you were like, yeah, I don't think you should do that. I think you should just, write the next book. And I was like, okay. And then we got off the Zoom and I literally wrote the next book in 3 weeks because it was like, it just like the ideas, it just like opened up this canister of ideas and it was waiting to be written. And then you and I had that conversation. So I find it really, just really wonderful for people to do that. And I always tell people too, I have like a page in my workbook for people to write down people, even if they like wouldn't ask those people, but write down people the kind of people you would want in your writing tribe, because everybody has a different understanding of what that should be like. Like some people are like, it should be very, it shouldn't have a lot of humor. Like it should be very literary and very, serious. And, sometimes we're on there like kind of like giggling or like laughing about something and then we're serious, and some people are very laid back or, just making sure that the energy aligns in the group because I think it makes it a lot. Once you find that group of people who have the same energy and have the same process, it's like it's just it's a magical thing. I don't know how else to explain it except for that
Right.
it's magical. It just
And what
makes
I'll,
things
I'll
work
also
better.
interject, yeah, I'll also interject that sometimes it's great to hear someone that has a different process than you, because sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
get stuck in our own process. And when you hear someone else saying, oh, well, you know what I do? Then you can go out and try it yourself. And that
Mm-hmm.
adds a new jolt sometimes to what we need to do, or what might just be a new way of trying something. And it adds new life. So
Sure.
it is very helpful to be part of that. Yeah, it really is.
Absolutely.
And then the energy of creatives is contagious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The energy of other creatives is contagious. So I love being in a room with people that have that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, having that tribe is
Yeah.
great.
It's making me think now, I think creative energy is sometimes the answer to a lot of things. Like if you feel like your life is, if you feel overwhelmed and you feel, let's say, even a lot of anxiety or maybe even a little depressed or something like that, like being in that energy of creative energy can sometimes just, it can do so much for you. It can change. Well, I mean, I guess you're caught. It's like we've talked about this before. You're in that place where you're creating and the whole world just it just stops. That place is whatever they call it, consciousness or the gap or whatever you want to call it, and you just have this potential, right? And then all of a sudden it's working, and then you come back to reality and you go, where was I for the last hour?
Yeah,
I don't
it
know,
is
but it was
wonderful.
wonderful. Yeah.
It
Yeah,
really is. It is.
exactly.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and then when you get with a writing tribe, your world expands because you begin to interact with their characters.
Hmm.
So the magic of their characters as they are being created and taking form is unbelievably exciting. It really is. I mean, so you learn about, why the little boy in my book, feels
Hmm.
that he wants to carry his dinosaur with him all the time. And certainly in Cloney Hatch and all of the characters in your books, you see them evolve. You see them how the strategies that they use when they have a particular stumbling block in their lives. So, yeah, having a writing tribe, you actually see a character go from A to Z. And
Hmm.
it's cool. It really is a cool thing.
It is cool.
Hmm.
It is. You made me think of when I was working with Debbie, and we were going through all of her characters, and me watching her characters just like kind of move along, and then she'd send me something else, and I'd be like, "Oh, he did that," like and just like I'm like, "Why did he do that?" And then she'd be like, "He did that because of this," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into the meat of this conversation, which is about the power of the senses. And again, I've told you a million times, I love talking about it and teaching about it, helping people to gently balance their lives. So one of the things that I've taught in the 6 pillars of health is that the organs are gateways. And I personally feel that I would go so far as to say that they're sacred gateways because they are the only way, really, that our outer world, besides, if we were to get into energy, that's a whole other conversation, but they're really the way that the outer world has access to our inner world. Excuse me. So I view the body as this very sacred place, and those gateways are these doors, right? And everything outside of us must go through in our outer environment. Again, besides the energy connection that you feel that kind of
Right.
just goes through anyway, but
Yeah.
they must go through and have access to those doorways in order to get to our sacred space. Another way to say that is that, when we eat something and we use the sense of taste, for instance, and it goes through our body, we have the digestive process, right? And the food digests, it comes through as energy and information from that food, and then it's digested through our body. When we take things in from the outside through these senses, it's like they are also energy and information, and so we digest them the same way that we would food. It's a different thing that we're digesting a sight, or we're digesting a sound, or something like that. Why do you think that the senses are just so important, not just for children but for adults too, and to really pay attention to what we're taking in from the outside?
I do think they're very important. And for me, the primary sense that I felt I used in the book and in my life is the sense of touch. And again, having taught school and everything like that, and being exposed to so many young children for such a long time in my life, there are many children that have disabilities, some who cannot hear and some who cannot speak. But every child can touch. And I was deeply, deeply moved by the story of Helen Keller
Mm-hmm.
because she was devoid of those two senses. And so the way that her teacher helped her was through touch. And again, it's the very first sense that a newborn child has is that they are being touched. Okay. And the very first sense that a brand new mother has in touching her own child who's just been born. And so touch is a very, very important thing. It teaches children a lot. I mean, it's one of the things that new moms say, don't touch that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is both a
I say it every
protective,
day. Yeah.
don't touch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the biggest lessons that a child learns on their own when they do touch something that is
Mm-hmm.
either hot or prickly or whatever, too cold, whatever it might be. And so we take in a lot of information through our fingertips. And our fingertips have more nerve endings than any other part of our body. So, like I said, touch is a very, very, very important sense. And it follows us through our adulthood because there's nothing that's more important for us other than to be hugged, to be touched,
Mm-hmm.
to hold hands, things along that line. And so I find, like I said, that particular sense being, as you said just a couple of minutes ago, a gateway for other senses. Because again, when we touch something, there's just an adorable video that's on YouTube right now of a mother that's filming her twins. And so she's introducing them to new foods and everything, and to watch each of the twins picking up the same food that's on the little plate, and to watch each of their reactions when they touch it, and then to watch when it touches their lips and touches their tongue. So, so I could go on and on for an hour, Steph, and I won't. But
No,
for me,
that
I think touch is for me, the primary gateway to learning about your other five senses or your other four senses, and it is something that follows us all the way through to the end of our lives.
sure. After learning a lot about the senses and looking at my own life and saying, okay, now I understand how important it is to take in certain things and be careful of some of the things that I've taken in. For those who are fortunate enough to have the senses of sight and smell and sound, and even taste, but more so the sight, sound, and smell. Sorry. When we think about the things that we're taking in today, right? So the sights, and a lot of people are on their phones and these social media apps. So I know that those images can have an effect on our mind, bodies, and emotions, right? And so if you're gazing at a sunset or a sunrise, there's this natural element to it that is going to, we are nature beings, so that's going to change our physiology in some way compared to if we're looking at a violent, crime. So what do you think about the importance of these natural sights and natural smells and natural sounds?
I think it's primary. It's a primary foundational, let's say, education for us. And I know this statement's going to sound, a little heavy, but I do believe it's the primary foundation for us to be able to have a productive, restful life. To be able to understand that connecting to nature and connecting and hearing what is around us in our environment is the input is worth a million. One of the illustrations that I do have in the book is the little boy and the dinosaurs kneeling in front of a huge picture window, and he's looking out at a bird that is in the tree, and he talks about hearing the sound of the bird outside, and he finds that that bird in his mind is inviting him to go outside and play. So he's using his imagination that the bird is talking to him, and the bird is. And if we're exposed to that when we're little children, then as adults, when we wake up during the spring, during the summer, and we have to get up and we have huge responsibilities of jobs and the hectic pace that we need to jump into, and we wake up to the sound of a bird chirping, having had that foundation of a child, we begin to understand that we're being invited into the day and that nature's already up before we are. For most of us, there are some people that get up before the birds, but it really just creates that foundational sense in us. And what I find really cool is the birds usually start to chirp at like 7, a little bit before 7 in the morning, and they also chirp around the same time at night. So there's a beginning and an ending to the day for the birds. So yes, to answer sight, yes, to be able to look at things that are growing, to give children that sense of you plant something, it is going to come up. There's a beautiful book that I'm reading right now. It's called Braiding Sweetgrass.
Okay.
And it is absolutely one of the most delightful reads that I have had in a long time. And the whole concept is this woman talks about how she grew up near fields and trees and things along that line. And she's a botanist. So she's very well educated, but she talks about that foundation that she had growing up
Mm-hmm.
around raw strawberries and what it means to breed sweetgrass and the smell of sweetgrass and everything like that. So for as an adult,
Mm-hmm.
I'm enjoying every bit of it because I did have that foundation as a child. So I hope to, through the pages of my book and through interacting with parents and everything, to be able to just have us all be mindful of what seems like we might be wasting time just walking outside in our bare feet.
Mm-hmm.
It's really setting a foundation for the rest of our lives. I won't even go into all the stuff about
Absolutely.
grounding. I could go on
Listen,
that
I
whole
know I
tangent
was thinking
too.
about that. I was thinking about that when we were, when I was kind of crafting some of these questions, and I was thinking, wow, like this is not going to be what everything that I want to talk about, but we'll have to have another
Yeah,
session where
we
we
will.
talk
Yeah,
about that.
groundings, walking on grass is, yeah. So,
You were talking about hearing and the birds, and I was thinking about primordial sounds, because birds are a primordial sound, which is basically a vibration of nature. And as I said before, I think that we forget that we are natural beings. As much as we have technology thrown in our faces and, we keep moving in that trajectory, we are natural beings. And so we gain our best, our most, as you said, restful or peaceful or whatever you want to say in mind, body, and spirit from the natural world. Nature can heal, right? So I often think about, what we listen to. There's nothing wrong with obviously listening to music. Music can be very healing, sounds can be very healing. But I do think about some of the things that we listen to, whether it's in a program or maybe it's, you know, let's say a news program or something like that, that is going to have some sort of, physiological effect on us, even though it might not seem like it at the time. And I think it is our duty as parents and educators and counselors and everything, and just as people to guide our children towards the natural, and have them have a way to ground. We're not going to go into specifics of grounding, but having a way to ground through these natural experiences. It makes me think of smell. So smell is the most interesting sense to me to investigate because it's it's something that we can associate with a pleasant experience or an unpleasant experience, and it can actually have a physiological effect on us. So, specifically, I remember if in your book you have Nana's baking cookies, right? And the little boy smells the cookies and he goes, "Is that Nana baking cookies?" And I would imagine that he feels very comforted by that, and it feels very peaceful in his life to smell this really delicious cookie. And then later when this little boy gets older and he's walking down the street and he walks past a bake shop and he smells those cookies, that is going to remind him of his Nana and her baking those cookies. And that's called neuroassociative conditioning. It's basically when you're linking a particular smell to an emotional state. I do want to give you a chance to kind of comment on that if you have any smells that are particularly affect you in a particular way.
I think the smell for myself that I find most uh, healing, generational healing, I mean, healing in all concepts, is spaghetti sauce. I
Okay.
mean,
Okay.
it sounds so silly, but and soup, and the
Okay.
reason being, yeah, just the combination of a lot of ingredients coming together. My mother used to be able to make beautiful soups, and so my visual was the countertop being filled with all different types of vegetables, and to watch my mom cut them all up and put them in a pot of just plain water. And then a cup. Now my mother would let her soup simmer all day. The way she would talk about it is they needed to mingle, So that was a
Mm,
big thing that my
mm,
mother. Everything had to mingle together. But to see her take a pot of just water and then put all of these individual, different shapes, different colors, and just put them all, and then hours later, seeing her spoon it out with a ladle and put it in a
mm,
bowl, And it was just magic. So, and to smell that all day. And she did the same thing with her spaghetti sauce, which was absolutely delicious. So, yes, smells are very, very, very important. Very important. And I made it, I did have a grandmother in the book because I wanted that to be generational. I really wanted everyone to understand that what we smell as a child, again, follows us through our lifetime. For anyone that goes to a movie theater, we all know that that smell is just one of the best smells in the world. You know, popcorn at a movie theater and the butter and all of that. So, yeah, smells really do affect us in very, very deep ways.
I was thinking about your image on the cover with the little boy in the rain. And as I sat there and I pondered it, I thought, one of the things about senses is that really everything can have that full experience, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're in the rain, you smell the rain, right? The rain has a smell, and that's,
It really does.
such a natural smell. It's in, sometimes it's like acid rain or something and you smell it,
Mhm.
but um, you always know when it's going to rain, right? Like you smell it, you feel it, you
Mhm.
taste it, right?
Right.
If you open your mouth, like this little boy, like tasting it,
Mhm.
um, you hear it, you
Mhm.
know,
And
and
that's why
so
I picked it. Right. It
yeah,
is. I mean,
yeah.
I picked it
I
as
was
the.
I
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
was going to ask you why you picked it, and then I was like,
It was.
she
Yeah.
probably picked it because it's a full immersive
It
experience.
is. Well, it embodies all the senses. I
Hmm.
mean, that picture, like all of your senses are there. You do. You hear it. You smell it. You taste it. You feel. I mean, all of it. It's all there. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
you see it. So it was for me the picture to put there, and it's exhilarating, and that's what I wanted to get across: is that the
Hmm.
discovery and the experiences that we have with our five senses just make us feel exuberant. They really do.
Hmm.
And you and I certainly know about the chakra system, and which is very
Hmm.
important for creative people. And yellow, which both the little boy and the dinosaur, they both have yellow raincoats, which is an important
Hmm.
color in the color system and for the chakra system. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Which you will catch in our next podcast about this now.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention, my son's 2.5. Um, he loves the book. What was your vision for the age group for this book in
Just
terms
for
of
them to
reading?
be right, for them to be able to connect with some of the things that they've experienced and some of the things that they will be experiencing. Um,
Mhm.
you mentioned a little bit ago about the fireworks, and I know that that was an experience that I had with my own daughter, Tara. And initially, the first few times that we went for 4th of July to go sit on the grass and listen to the fireworks, it was not a good experience for her. The sound was too much.
Mhm.
So she buried her head in my
Mhm.
chin, in my neck. Um, but every the following year, like she'd open her eye and just look at it. So it was
Mm.
her gradual experience of, all right, well, the sound is a little bit too loud, but look at all those beautiful colors. So,
Mhm.
so I tried to pick particular experiences to put in the book that children, like I said, might initially be frightened about, but
Mhm.
as a parent or grandparent or friend is reading the book, they themselves can talk to the child about, well, you know what? Someday you're going to be able to see, and so on and so forth. So I wanted it to be a very
Mhm.
experiential book. Go ahead,
Yeah,
hon.
in terms of um, the actual age that you would recommend reading, besides, adults reading it to their kids or grandkids and
Mhm.
stuff, um, for children, what would you say, 2 to around 8, or
I
what
would
did
no,
you
I
choose
think
for that?
anywhere from 4.5 to 7
Okay.
Even
Okay.
eight. I mean, eight. Because you can take on a whole different concept with the book at around eight. But I'd say
Mm-hmm.
between 4 and 8. 4, I think, is a great age for identification.
Okay.
Okay, for the child to identify, oh, I did that, and
Mm-hmm.
oh, things along that line. And 5 is, oh, I haven't done that, but I think I'm going to try that because at 5 you become
Sure.
quite independent.
Mm-hmm.
At 5,
Mm-hmm.
you know what the world's about.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep. You know every,
six,
like, you
yeah,
probably do know a lot.
and by 6 and 7, that's really when you get to the ages of being able to share with your friends. Ah, did you just see? That's when, and again, you hear, did you just? And that's what kids say to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Did you just see the fireworks, or did you just go, and so on and so forth? So, from, like I said, 5 and 6, and 6 and 7 is where you start to share the experience, which helps you
Gotcha.
gain your own independence and self awareness.
So you have a book that's in the process that we're not going to talk about because it's a secret right now. And you and I do want to mention before we get to our, closing scene here. We have a podcast that will be releasing in January, and I will provide everyone with more details. But this podcast will be the ultimate confidence podcast for goddesses with anxiety. So you will definitely want to tune into that. I will keep everybody updated with that information. And what I want to do in closing is I would like you to tell everyone where they can get your book, and also where they can contact you if they want to contact you.
Sure. The book you can find on Amazon, and that's probably the primary place right now at this particular time that I'd ask people to go to, because it's easier. I think it's just a real quick, easy way to go and find the book. And as far as getting a hold of me, I can be contacted at my email address. Okay, and Steph, maybe we can put it along with
Hmm.
the
Yep,
podcast, because it
sure.
is angelsrwhispering@yahoo.com. So to reach out to me there, and I'm very open to, especially what my heart loves to do is to interact with parents, young parents and
Hmm.
grandparents, and people who are interested in the developmental process of children. And like you said a minute ago, Steph, definitely in enhancing the innocent, beautiful journey of discovering the world and each individual child's creativity, unique creativity. That's a big passion of mine.
Great. Well, thank you for being here today. I've had a great chat, and you and I will be chatting again soon, and people will
Forward
know
to
where
it.
to reach you. Yep, I
Mhm.
will put all of the information in the podcast area for people to look at. So that'll be below wherever the broadcast is. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in
Yeah,
today. As Anna Marie said, you can get Did You Just on Amazon, and I will provide the link below. Thank you for tuning in. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you like this podcast, because you supporting this podcast allows me to bring even more quality technology and make it look even better.